Welcome to yet another episode of Meet Your Aspirants, and I am always Doofan Abu-Amali. Please, before we go forward, would you please subscribe to my YouTube channel, hit the like button or dislike button is allowed, and as well, I would love to ask you to please take a minute to touch on the bell sign beneath, so that anytime we upload a new video, you will get an alert. Thank you so much. Today, Nigerian politics is in a place that everybody wouldn't have believed or hoped for it to be. Where is that place I'm talking about? It's not where any of us dreamt of. With the return of democracy, after a very long military rule, every Nigerian had hope. Every Nigerian thought and hoped that today will be better. Today we will have very perfect infrastructure like other developed countries. Why not? We are giants of the Africa. But are we really living up to expectation? Is this democracy really what we thought it's going to be? Today we have a young man that is going to talk about some of these things and even more. He's going to help us understand on what path we are, where we have come from, and are we even making progress? Today in the house, I have a young man that politics has been in his blood for a very long time. He started as a unionist while in school. He didn't wait for any godfather. He has struggled, though not a success story yet, as in serving in a political office, but he has done so much in Benue politics. Welcome on stage, Franc Fagah Utoo. He's a lawyer. How can you assess the politics of Nigeria and the players? Are they really representing the interests of the masses?
All right, thank you very much. Your question is quite straight but quite dicey, because in Nigeria's politics today we have two sets of players. Players that are quite devoted to the cause of the nation, towards the cause of building a virile, viable Nigeria. And of course, the other category of players are players that are devoted to the cause of personal interest. This is the dilemma that we have in the politics of today, and majorly it is built on the grounds of the fact that our politics lacks ideology, and so it breeds all kinds of politicians. You find strange bedfellows mixing together, all in the names of politics and playing different kind of games. And so, since the inception of democracy in 1999 to date, I can't say our politics has grown so big to the extent of being emulated by anybody. I'm not even trying to talk of people outside Nigeria. We have so much work to do.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
You aspired to represent your people at the Federal House of Representatives.
Correct.
In 2015. And we have heard you cried in several forums that you were robbed. Can you tell us a little about that?
It was very clear to the whole world. I contested as an aspirant under the APC in December 2014. I won the election quite very clear. I was declared on the field. And when I was contesting, I knew that I was contesting against major forces, do you understand? Because my opponent was backed by the entirety of the party apparatchik and the leadership of the party at the state level, and of course the leader of the party in the state with his wife. Everybody was behind my opponent.
When you mean the leader of the party in the state?
We have just one leader of APC in Benue State, obviously Senator George Akumi and his wife Regina Akumi. They stood vehemently against my aspiration. I quite exactly don't understand why, you know. But at the end of the day, the delegates, we got the most majority of the delegates. They casted their votes for us. At the end of voting and counting, I was declared winner of the primaries. But in a very strange twist, the following day, they presented a certificate of returns to my opponent, who lost on the field, you know. And I invoked the provisions of the APC constitution that allows you to appeal in such kind of instances. I appealed to the National Secretariat of the party. The National Secretariat of the party delegated an appeal committee that came to Benue State. And after the investigation, the assessment and reassessment, they found out that I was a legitimate winner. They presented me with their report, which indicated I was a winner. And of course, in law and by logic, the appeal report supersedes what earlier happened, you know, the certificate of return given to my opponent. But at the end of the day, neither me nor my opponent, my original opponent in the contest, had their names sent to INEC. A strange person altogether was imported from the PDP and had his name sent. Now we are saying this cannot be democracy in 21st century. It happens nowhere. As a matter of fact, if it has happened in Southeast Asian nations of Singapore, Indonesia, the Philippines, such could have attracted death sentence. But in Nigeria, we play over little things. You know, these are very serious matters, and we play over them. You are going to perjure and forge documents, you know, to say someone who was never part of the election actually won the election, and you sent his name to the Independent National Electoral Commission. I was disappointed because the kind of noise I was expecting from a lot of people, even from the media, was not generated.
Could that be that they thought maybe it was a party problem, and they did not need to dive into it or even interrupt? You
know, unfortunately, that's one part that needs to be addressed. You find a situation where Nigerians will have quite a number of very educated young people, very educated people. I think, at the risk of sounding arrogant, I want to say Nigeria is the most educated country in Africa. Do you understand? And Benue State, where I come from, is the most educated state in the north. Okay, we are used to hearing this refrain that party supremacy, the party is allowed to send any kind of name she wants to send. But that's not true. The party can send that name in compliance with our constitution, with our electoral guidelines, and very importantly, in compliance with the Electoral Act 2010 as amended. So if any of these laws or rules is violated in the course of sending a name of a candidate, there will be sanction, appropriate sanction. That is, the court will come in and do just what is right.
But you went up to the highest court in the
exactly,
land.
Up to the Supreme Court. Yeah. That is another thing altogether. I lost in the Supreme Court on technical grounds, on something that is as little as filing our absence to file the leave of court. Because the 5 grounds of appeal that we file at the Supreme Court, it is quite right in law that when the grounds of appeal are grounds strictly on law, you don't need to file leave of court. Okay. But when there are grounds of mixed fact and law, then you need to file leave of court. Okay. Now, there's a thin line between mixed fact and law, because there's a thin line between law and fact. So sometimes you see that a ground of appeal looks quite like grounds of law. But during judgment, the Supreme Court justices will tell you that no, this particular ground is a mixture of fact and law. Okay. And that was what happened in my case, that they found out that 1 or 2 of the grounds were a mix of fact and law. Okay. And so the leave was supposed to be the pillar that will hold the case. So in the absence of the pillar, the case crumbled. You know, so they did not go into the merit of the case. And in the merit of the case, of course, the INEC report showed that I won. The INEC is the third respondent in the case. And almost every other exhibit points to the fact that we won, you know, but we lost on technicality. And it's quite unfortunate, because for some of us, I studied law in Britain, and in Britain, they don't allow technicality overrides substance. Okay. Yeah, because it denies justice in most cases when you allow technicality to deny, you know, like in my case, for instance, for you to say, I expected the court, if of course there was the failure of us to obtain the leave of court, the court should have asked us to go and obtain leave of court. Then let's come, and then they will decide on the merits of the case. I understand. But by the time you begin to prioritize technicality, you deny substantial justice.
So do you feel justice was actually served?
Of course, it is a quite trite rule of law that justice should not just be done, but it should be seen to be done. It is left to the average, prudent, reasonable man in the society. Like if you go to Benue, the people from our place, they know that, okay, this is the person they voted. This one was not altogether in the game. So at the end of the day, it is their judgment that is more important. How were they able to perceive the judgment of the Supreme Court? It is a very, very fundamental rule of justice, that justice should not just be done, but be seen to be done by the people at the grassroots. So it is a question that also applies to you.
Okay. Okay, that's nice. You are one of the youths that are trying to enter the game. When I mean the game, political game, and maybe be able to serve in a political office without godfatherism, without godfather. How has the experience been for you so far?
All right, thank you very much. Firstly, I want to say I'm no longer a youth. I've been struggling when I was a youth. I'm just a young man now, you know. I've hit my 40s, so I won't even subscribe to being called a youth again. You know, we quite abuse such words in Nigeria, especially the Nigerian political realm. So I'm a young man, firstly. And although I've been playing politics since when I was a youth, you know, and even when I was 16.
So what's the definition of youth?
Of course, a youth by United Nations definition is a person between the ages of 18 and 35, you know. Of course, in most political...
So soon I will not be a youth anymore.
Exactly.
That's scary.
Yeah. Even in the UK, for instance, the Young Labour, that is the youth arm of Labour Party. You know, for you to be a member, you have to be within the range of 18 and 35. So anything outside 35 is no longer a youth.
Why are we measuring ourselves with United Nations and what? Why can't we just do something for us Nigerians and say a youth is from so age to so age? Do we have to live on their own measurements?
Yeah, even in Nigeria, most of the major parties, if you look at the constitution, they define youth within the same range.
Okay.
You know, so but it's quite unfortunate that sometimes in electing members of the ESCO of the party, especially youth leaders, sometimes they don't just look at that. But in many of the political parties, you still find this age range for youth that defines you. Okay, now going back to your question, the question of Godfather. You know, Godfather is not together. Godfatherism is not altogether bad. Do you understand? It's just that we've over abused it in Nigeria. If you are contesting, Abraham Lincoln, one of the most famous presidents of the United States, said, "For you to be a good leader, you have to learn to be a good follower." It means that there is somebody up there that you are emulating, or you've agreed to be a protege, you know, to come under his guidance. You know, I think I have such kind of people here, you know, so that may not altogether be Godfather.
Can you mention them?
Of course,
because you seem to be you have friends in all political parties.
Yes, I do. I have friends everywhere, and of course, presently I have the biggest person I try to, that always serve as a guide to me is Right Honorable Emmanuel Jime, the MD of NEBSA, you know, because he has done that, he has been there and he has done that. We belong to the same profession. He's a lawyer who has been like almost 20-something years ahead of me in the legal practice. Desiring to go into the legislative arm of government, he has been there. So you could see, for whatever I want to do, he has been there. We happen to come from the same geopolitical constituency and even cultural constituency. We are not just Tiv, we are not just here, we are also Isherif.
Okay.
You know, so we are from the same cultural constituency. So I find him as a leading light, you know. And Ali Mozrui, a famous East African professor of history, once said, Balanga Balanga Loko Loko Moshi, that is Swahili for he who has the light must always show the way.
Okay.
So for me, he has that, he's a beacon of that light, you know, he has that light. And I've always been together with him to be able to show, to be able to sight my way through. And just like you mentioned, I also have some people try to emulate many of the virtues they were able to dispense in politics. I have some in the PDP, like Comrade Abomoro, a former minister. You know, I have some in the APC, like Emmanuel Jume, like you know. I have some in the SDP, which is my party now, like Ambassador Yowesi Hai, a former Nigerian High Commissioner to Canada, you know. So these are people that I have one or two things that I always try to learn from. So I won't deny the fact that I don't have somebody I try to emulate, a leader I look up to. But that term, godfatherism, is exactly what I don't key into, because it's been so much misused in Nigeria and it's more negatively used.
Okay.
Yeah.
But how has the experience been without godfatherism in your journey so far?
Yeah, it's been quite challenging. You know, it's been quite challenging. What gets us going is the fact that we have a very veritable, formidable structure on ground. You know, and we've paid our dues, and we know that the political consciousness amongst Nigerians have gone very high right now. People are judging you based on your capacity, on your credibility, on your character, and on your competence. And I think we have this we have this so much in bulk in us, you know. So we are just naturally loved by the people, because we've been able to prove that we can always defend their interests at all times. I remember when I was in court, there was no amount of persuasion, no amount of inducement that was not flaunted on me, you know. But I resisted all that, because we feel we have to defend the mandate of the people. We don't have to betray the people's trust. They were able to trust you even without money, without any form of financial gratification or material gratification. They supported you. They stayed under the rains, under the sun, to vote you and to defend that mandate. So you should be seen to defend that mandate given to you. So I think that has sent home a very powerful message to our people, that we can be able to defend their interests at all times, no matter the quantum of gratification that has been flaunted on us, you know. So, but then it's not been easy, because all over the world, you know, when you are involved in politics, it's not just in Nigeria, everywhere. You need material support. You need a very huge amount of finances to be able to propel the engine, that you'll be able to go around, you know, be able to talk to your people. We know that in countries like United States and the UK, for instance, there are always donations to political campaigns. I think we're not quite mature for that, because when you put up for donations, the people begin to look at you as someone who is not quite serious. But you know, when Obama was going for president, for instance, he was just a senator of 1.5 years, whose earnings was not even up to $100,000. But he was able to build up one of the most effective campaign organization in the world, you know, because of the donations that were coming from people. People were making $5, $10, $20 donation. At the end of the day, he was able to garner more than $100 million, you know, to run his campaign. But when you put up such in Nigeria, you know, some people take you as someone who is not too serious, or who is not ready, that you're just coming up and you're waiting for donations. So they want you to look up to someone somewhere who will support you. I think that's where some of us are having that challenge. Okay.
Was it because of how you were treated in APC and the leadership haven't changed that you decided to decamp and you are now contesting for the same office but under SDP?
Exactly, because who were the first set of victims in the APC? A lot of people complain now that they've been treated very unfairly. Even the people that were imposed on the party now are running. It's quite very funny. They are running away from the party, saying they've been treated so unfairly. You know, who were the first set of victims in the APC? Who were victimized as far back as 2014, when APC held her first set of primaries? Who were victimized at that point, you know? And I started fighting for the cause of justice right from that point, you know. If you look at the motto of APC, the motto is justice, peace, and unity. Justice is the first word there. And of course, justice was not done in my case, you know. even though I exhausted the internal appeal mechanism of the party by appealing the injustice meted to me during the primaries, yet the party could not, on her own, the party could not still endorse the report of our appeal committee. She still went ahead to import somebody who was from the PDP. That's the highest form of anti-party activity.
Talking about bringing someone from PDP, are these people different? PDP, APC, SDP, are they different? Because you can imagine someone from APC bringing a fresh candidate purely from another party to come and take its party's ticket that have been contested over and won.
I think the problem is not the nomenclatures, it's not the names, the initials of SDP, PDP, or APC. The problem is the people running these political parties, the leaders of these parties. If you look at the APC constitution, for instance, the constitution is very comprehensive. Do you understand? Very elaborate. It was able to highlight every political point that you need to know. You know, the aims and objectives are well encapsulated. And then this particular procedure was well highlighted that during primaries, the highest, the person who met with the highest number will be declared victor, and he'll be given this, you know. I was able to exhaust all these channels. I contested, I won. Everything is in the Constitution. Up to going to the appeal, it's provided by the Constitution. You understand?
Yeah.
But you see them going out of their way. And incidentally, when we went to court, all the documents that were provided by the lawyers of APC were forged. And it's an offense that declared that, yeah, by the lawyers of the APC. Because unfortunately, it was signed by one of my classmates in the law school who was the PA to the legal advisor of the APC. We have to say this very open. Every imaginable document provided by the APC in the court was forged. Do you understand? Because the forged result sheets, nomination paper saying the person who won that election was one Peter Bulan, who today is a houseboy in Senator George Akume's house in Maitama. Do you understand? Who is not even from Makodi Guma, who cannot call the name of one delegate from our federal constituency. They forged all these things to say he was the one that won. And at a later point, he withdrew. And because he withdrew, there was a space, there was a gap. So they had to bring Dixon Taki in, you know, who actually came second. It was quite very funny. For some of us that are well educated and quite enlightened, there's no amount of persuasion that could have been enough for us to withdraw that, because to withdraw our case from court, because the whole thing is even funnier than a drama. So we have to challenge that kind of impunity. I'm close to all those people that perpetrate, as you know. I'm very close to Senator Akume. I was his coordinator for youth and students in his re-election campaign organization in 2003.
That was why I wondered why he didn't support you.
Exactly. But we have to fight, we have to keep this aside. Aristotle once said, amicus Plato, amicus Socrates, sed magi, amica veritas. That's Latin for Socrates is my friend, Plato is my friend, but truth is dearest. You know, so sometimes there comes a time that the interest of friends clashes with truth. Truth has to prevail. If we are desirous of a very great country, we have to always prioritize truth and justice. So it's quite unfortunate. These parties, if you look at their ideologies, if you look at their aims and objectives, they are well highlighted, well encapsulated. But the officers responsible for the execution of what the party represents are the people that are really at fault. They are not quite very serious set of people. So that was exactly what happened to me in APC. Do you know that when I was challenging my mandate in APC, I was suspended by the party, even without fair hearing. I just heard that it was announced on Radio Benue, you know, that I was suspended because I was challenging, even though I was adhering strictly to the provisions of the Constitution, because the Constitution actually forbids you from instituting litigation against the party. But it says you can do that when you exhaust the internal appeal mechanism of the party, which was what I did, because when that thing happened, I went to appeal. And appeal and settled my victory. Yet they could not comply, so I went to court. So they gave me suspension. If you if you Google, even last year I was abducted at the instance of the party chairman. So you see the party chairman in Benin, I was abducted in Abuja and taken to Benin, at the instance of the party chairman.
Yeah.
So the party has shown
Well,
so much.
The free Franc campaign.
Exactly. If you Google it, it's quite. You see more than 100 sites and blogs that were leading the advocacy for my release and all those. So you see, that's a party that some of us.
What was that for?
Yeah, that I was criticizing him very well, very deeply on social media, and it's quite a very funny accusation anyway. But I was discharged immediately because.
How will you describe APC as a party?
APC, it's just a conglomeration of strange bedfellows. That's the truth of the matter, because I've seen a situation where the people are not quite desirous of implementing the manifesto of the party, of even adhering to the laws they gave themselves. You understand? And of course, that is why I feel that I can't operate under this space. As a young man, I should be.
But is there any space in Nigeria that is different? Because we complain the same thing about PDP, and I'm not sure they have repented. Ekiti State is an example where the outgoing governor, endorsed the professor. So is there anywhere that is free of this particular imposition that you're talking about?
Yeah, I'm not against endorsement. Anybody, like in Ekiti, for instance.
Imposition.
I don't think there was imposition, because I watched their primaries. Do you understand? I watched their primaries. It was televised live. I watched their primaries, But for endorsement, anybody can endorse anybody, even in civilized climes.
But is there any political platform right now in Nigeria that is clear and free of imposition? In some quarters, of course, not all.
I hope that my new platform, the SDP, will be different, because we have a national chairman, Olufalaye, who has been a proven Democrat, who has been saying over and over and over again that the party's constitution must be adhered, in the course of carrying out any party activity like elections and the rest. So I hope it will be different. But it's quite sad that so far we've not seen so much differences between these parties. And that is why some of us keep searching. Because we cannot just play same game. If we are truly desirous of a greater nation, which some of us are quite committed to, So you have to keep searching so that you get it right. I cannot, in all honesty, emulate what is happening. Because we have to think, I have two kids. I've always thought of what kind of culture are we going to, to build for this kind of people coming up, for the generation after us. So we have to be sincere. And I've seen no sincerity in the game that has been played so far, or that is playing out so far. And that is why some of us keep searching, And we're trying to see where we can gather like minds, so that we can alter the status quo to a very great extent. Even if we cannot overhaul it, we have to alter the status quo before things will be right, because we cannot continue to play the same kind of politics with the same kind of players and expect a different result. The result will always be the same,
But look at the list of our presidential aspirants. There seems to be the same people.
Yeah, but we have quite a number of new great ideas coming up, like the likes of Kingsley Moghalu, the likes of Sowore, the likes of Ahmed Buhari, These are young people, brilliant ideas, and if you ask me, I'll go for any of this.
Well, would these people allow them? Would they allow them any political platform whatsoever?
That is another thing we have to take, and that is why some of us are involved in this, It is said, like Mandela once said, freedom cannot be voluntarily given. It must be taken. So we have to convert all the young people, that share like minds, like ideas. We have to converge and know that this is a game that cannot be handed over to you on a platter of gold. You have to go all out and force it onto yourself, Even the Bible is quite philosophical about that. In the book of Matthew chapter 11 verses 12, it says, right from the days of John the Baptist until now, the kingdom of God suffered violence, and violence taketh it by force. So I think that is what we should do, because by the time you sit back and you are clapping because the president just appended his signature to a law called Not Too Young to Run, and you feel the power be handed over to you, man, you are living in a delusion of grandeur. This is the time that you have to stand up and know that we have to seize the power by ourselves, by our might, but along the right path anyway. So I think that is an advice to young people. We cannot sit back and expect these people to hand over power on a platter.
So what do you think is the right step to take and send those people back home? Retire them completely?
Yeah, as young people, we have demographically, we have the population. Do you understand? We have the requisite number. If you look at previous elections, the history of previous elections, the highest percentage of voters, people between the ages of 18 and 35, they constitute up to 60% or more of the voters. You know, why can't we use this number to our advantage? That is the problem, I think, and one of the problems is the problem of leadership. A problem where we'll get a rallying point is the absence of having rallying points. You know, that is what some of us desire to do, but we're facing one or two challenges. Even though we could have stand to constitute as the rallying point for young people,
okay,
so that we can aggregate.
Don't you think that with this, I understand what you're trying to talk about, the center, you need someone like to be like a leader to mobilize the youth to come together and follow one particular agenda, which is the enthronement of the youth in the political leadership. Correct. But however, we have other vibrant and young leaders serving presently that have money. Why are you not exploring this particular avenues to see whether they will be able to help the other ones come on board?
Yeah, it's still part of our plans, you know, it's still part of our plans, and I know that in one or two areas contacts were made. But unfortunately, for some of these leaders that may appear, I may appear to have these attributes you are mentioning, and as long as where they are serves their interest, they'll continue to stay where they are. You know, they are not ready to change positions. You should always expect that, and we've always had them.
You have just said something, foot soldiers of the old me. Are we really, really going to get rid of this old me?
Yeah, that's the problem.
And
I just want you to also understand that when I say old men, I'm not completely putting everybody together. Do you understand?
No, we Nigerians, we know them.
Yeah, exactly. We have generational equity. You understand? A generational kind of equilibrium that we need the wisdom of the old order and then the agility and sagacity of the younger generation. We have to have a mix.